The Catholic Church recognizes over 10,000 saints, many of whom have been depicted in artworks over time. But how do you know which saint you see here? You need to recognize the specific symbols and attributes related to each saint, like the plain brown habit he is wearing, with a rope tied around the waist, which is the way that Saint Francis of Assisi is depicted. But what about the man with an arrow in his body? And how do you distinguish between the many saints who are depicted with a Bible or skull? Last week's video was about identifying female saints, and this one discusses 4 prominent males: Saints Jerome, Augustine, Sebastian, and George. Saint Jerome lived in the 4th century, and his claim to fame is that he translated the Bible into Latin, and he also wrote many influential commentaries on the Bible. So the presence of a book or Bible is a good clue to identify Saint Jerome. But he is obviously not the only saint who is associated with a book, most noticeably the 4 evangelists. In an earlier video on this channel, I have discussed how to distinguish between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in paintings. Additional clues to identify Saint Jerome are vanitas symbols, referring to the transience of earthly life, and most commonly a skull is included. But it can also be an unlit candle, like in this painting by Caravaggio, or an hourglass, like in this engraving by Albrecht Dürer. Other symbols include a lion, referring to a story that he tamed a lion in the wilderness, not to be confused with the evangelist Mark, who is also associated with the lion. And then there's the frequent presence of a crucifix, referring to the penitence of Saint Jerome. Augustine of Hippo, better known as Saint Augustine, is just like Saint Jerome considered to be one of the most important Latin fathers of the Church. The reason is that their writings in Latin were very influential for the development of the Christian Church. Here you can see Saint Jerome and Augustine together, both depicted with a book. In this case, Augustine is shown on the left, and I know that because Augustine is more often depicted as a bishop, even though Jerome was a cardinal, which ranks even higher in the Catholic Church. Other than that he is sometimes depicted with a book and that he is frequently dressed as a bishop, it's not that easy to recognize Saint Augustine. There's not one specific story from his life that particularly stands out, which inspired many artists. So what has happened is that paintings of him show several specific moments from his life, like in this late 15th century work entitled Scenes from the Life of Saint Augustine of Hippo. It shows 5 moments from his life. At the center he is consecrated as bishop in a city in current-day Algeria. At the bottom right he is preaching. The scene above shows him with a kid who argues that filling a hole in the sand with water is just as easy as explaining who the Holy Trinity is. In the upper left, he is ordained as a priest, and at the bottom left shows him preaching with his mother next to him. One very specific reference to St. Augustine, which is sometimes included, is a flaming heart, like in this work from around 1650 by Philippe de Champagne. It refers to his love for God and people and his deep desire for knowledge and wisdom. One of the easier saints to recognize is Saint Sebastian, as he is almost always portrayed with at least one arrow in his body. It refers to the way he was supposed to die in the 3rd century when Emperor Diocletian was persecuting many Christians. Sebastian had kept his faith a secret for many years and converted many people to Christianity in the meanwhile, but once his faith was discovered, he was bound to a tree or something like that, which is another way to confirm that we are really looking at Saint Sebastian. The emperor's best archers then shot their arrows at him, and they left him there for death. But the arrows miraculously did not kill him, and Saint Irene nursed him back to health, after which he confronted the emperor with his sins, only to be executed a second time, and this time he was beaten to death. Around the same time as Saint Sebastian, there was a Roman military officer named George who would also be martyred. But unlike many other saints, Saint George is not depicted with attributes related to his death, because there's an even more spectacular legend that is associated with him, which is the story of Saint George and the dragon, which was first written down 8 centuries after his death. The story is as follows. In current-day Libya, a fierce dragon was terrorizing the city of Cylene, and to keep him in check, the citizens donated 2 sheep to the dragon every day. They eventually would offer him 1 person each day, chosen by lottery, whom the dragon would devour. One day, the lot fell on the king's daughter, and she was to be offered. But just before she was eaten by the dragon, George passed by, and he would defeat the dragon with his lance. George would receive many gifts for his heroic deed, but he would give all of it away to the poor. This story has been very popular among artists over the centuries. So, these are only some of the many male saints that exist. In fact, there are over 10,000 unique male saints. If you enjoyed this and you want me to discuss more of these saints, please let me know in the comment section down below, including any saints that you would like to see and recognize. Let me finish by putting out a little test, which is this painting from around 1625 by Jacob Jordaens after a sketch by Peter Paul Rubens. It is entitled The 4 Latin Church Fathers, and in alphabetical order they include Saints Ambrose, Augustine, Gregory, and Jerome. If you carefully study the painting, each of them has a specific attribute that helps us to identify them with certainty. Of course, we have not discussed Saints Ambrose and Gregory the Great in this video, so the challenge is if you can identify Augustine and Jerome. You can pause the video here and then I will discuss all 4 of them. So, the 4 important attributes that you can recognize in this painting are the lion on the left, the flaming heart above the second saint, the white dove above the third one, and the beehive on the right. So the saint with the lion at his feet on the left is Saint Jerome, followed by Saint Augustine, whose symbol is the flaming heart. Then the white dove refers to a story about Saint Gregory, who was inspired to speak eloquently by a white dove who helped him to choose the right words when explaining the Bible. And the beehive is a symbol for the patience and eloquence of Saint Ambrose. Well, I hope you found this discussion interesting, and if you did, please support the channel by hitting the thumbs up button, subscribe and hit that notification bell. And don't forget to leave any comments about any other saints you would like me to discuss or other subjects that you would like to see a video about. Thanks for watching.